What's up, you beautiful, lovely people that listen to music? We're going to do an album review. I haven't done one in a while. I think it's been about a month or two. I always listen to things. I consider reviewing things, and then eventually they get tossed to the wayside in favor of projects that are a little easier to finish. But I'm testing myself, I'm holding myself accountable, and we're going to do a review. And the album that we are reviewing today is Midwest Vignettes by Carlby. Carlby is a Midwest emo and alternative pop artist hailing from the particularly cheesy state of Wisconsin, and since early 2020 has been an artist that I have kept up with closely and followed as his music has evolved and cultivated into a polished powerhouse of a discography. He has released a decent number of EPs and various projects over the years, primarily in the form of retroactively collected singles compilations, and although EPs like College Town and I've Decided Not to Stay showcase Carlby's talent as a songwriter and a performer, I don't feel as if we've truly experienced the scope of what he is capable of doing in the context of a full-length project up until now. Because over time, alongside longtime collaborator Hirosha, Carlby has consistently continued to impress me with a glossy pop rock sound that has been meticulously crafted and condensed into only the best and most pristine elements of his creative process, trimming the fat away with each song. But despite this borderline perfectionist approach to his sound, a consistent stream of singles has been the provided form of listening experience, even with some EPs releasing only one track at a time. And after 4 fantastic singles, my desired full-length Carlby experience has finally arrived. 12 tracks, Hirosha in the executive producer chair, some fantastic features, Midwest Vignettes has arrived, and it is wonderful. The album kicks off with Winnebago Street with dual production from Hirosha and Lavender Town, and at the risk of sounding redundant, this it sounds like an intro to a project. The slow build in the beginning with a slick and somber guitar riff that is gradually met with an increasing amount of percussion in the form of steady cymbals and muted snares is pretty instantly captivating. And there's even a bit of a quick twinkly melody that kind of sounds almost like an audio cue, letting the song know it's time to begin. And once Carlby's vocals come into play, I'm happy but also not particularly surprised. His clean singing paired with a technically proficient vocal mix is a familiar sound that I'm used to hearing from him. He croons about isolation that has resulted from empty promises and how these fragments left behind after a tumultuous relationship sort of act as the catalyst that kickstart the creation of a new path to cope and, as he puts it, escape from his hometown. His vocals remain at a consistently somber energy even as the wide, saturated guitars begin to swell around him, leaving the gritty and intense vocals to Hirosha, who makes an appearance on the track in the form of distant background vocals, and later a harsh and yelled contrast to Carlby's persistently mellow approach. It's a fantastic way to start the album, culminating into tumbling and impactful drum breaks, the aforementioned guitar grows more and more, and then finally a short message to the listener to tell them what this album is all about. And then It's Getting Bad Again is up next, and this song sees Jost in the co-production seat alongside Hirosha, and unlike the slow build of the intro track, It's Getting Bad Again doesn't waste as much time, doesn't spend as long to ramp up the energy, and has Carlby's vocals in a much more strained and emotionally desperate context. Generally, the song is about mental health, with Carlby and Hirosha trading lines going back and forth about lines about hesitancy to rely on medication, the expectations of where they thought they would be at this point in their lives, and the reality of the emotional trajectory that they've been on. It is a song about the contentions with progress and how complacency can sneak up on you and take hold despite desperately wanting to persevere and push past the problems that you're faced with. I really enjoy how Carlby and Hirosha are both highlighted with this back and forth line delivery that they have for most of the track. Both of them do a great job with the songwriting to make a personally vulnerable track that also has this sort of anthemic quality for people to relate to. The subject matter is incredibly relatable, and these displayed perspectives that are shown as well. Twinkly guitar riffs act as the foundation for the first verse with some fairly reserved percussion, but it's not a sound that necessarily sticks around too long because the hook is absolutely explosive. Processed beeps, shaky guitar chords, and these sharp, stuttery hi-hats and other percussion sort of take the place of the organic and loose aesthetics that the song previously puts on display in the beginning. I love the energy of the track. I think that both Carlby and Hirosha have impressive, compelling vocal performances, and everything is wrapped up nicely with a slowed down and pitched outro. Up next would be Friends and Cigarettes, which was the first single released for the album back back in July, and similar to It's Getting Bad Again, it is also produced by Hirosha and Jolst. And similar to the tracks we've already discussed, Midwest guitar styles are used as the main melodies of the tracks, but other elements of the song like the fast-paced, almost breakcore inspired drum patterns and the wide inspirational chords in the hook give pop a slight edge over the other potential classifications of the song, and as a result, Friends and Cigarettes is a sentimental and warm pop track with ethereal melodies that surround dampened harmonies that boost the best qualities of Carlby's mid-range timbre. And even though we're only 3 songs into the album at this point, something I've noticed is that Carlby is not letting themes and topics overstay their welcome, at least, on the individual tracks. There's overarching themes and narratives to this project that we will get into later, but in terms of comparing the individual tracks, each song provides great songwriting on a variety of topics, a lot of the time, individual to each song. Carlby on this project is sharing a bunch of topics, perspectives, and different life experiences, and each song is made with intent and it feels purposeful, and I really appreciate the lack of fluff or filler on this album. I love how catchy this song is, and something tells me it is not the only catchy pop track on this project. Then there's Maybe She Just Fell Asleep with Peanut, and it is one of the more rock-driven songs I would say on the album, with a chorus that sounds like post-hardcore with about 10% of the bite taken back, resulting in a satisfying harmony of smooth vocals and gritty instrumentation. And Hirosha's background vocals on this provide the vocal intensity that pairs with the heavy impact of the hook, with distant screams and guttural growls filling a rather roomy space in the background, and hearing Carlby's softly mixed melodies harmonize with Hirosha's feverishly shouted notes on this track only reinforces my love for them as a duo. Their cadences are perfect for each other. It's genuinely astonishing. The song is about how insecurity and lack of communication can lead to skepticism on the integrity of relationships, with the first verse showing Carlby attempting to justify reasons for somebody, not answering the phone and questioning if infidelity is potentially at play here, but also not creating a one-sided narrative by also showcasing awareness that a lot of these thoughts can be projection and can stem from insecurity rather than concrete evidence. And to further expand on this narrative, Peanut's verse is actually the opposing side to what Carlby is singing about, as she provides answers to the questions and speculations that Carlby makes in the first verse of the song. I think it's a really interesting dynamic and great songwriting from both of these artists. Instead of presenting a black and white narrative with an objective right and wrong, neither perspective is necessarily correct or incorrect, just individually coping with their own problems that leak into this depicted relationship. Peanut's layered and wide verse and vocal mix is a great addition to this track, wonderfully matching the energy of the song and giving a fantastic performance. Then 10 Tons sees Pekarot kind of jump into the production team here. I'm pretty familiar with his work, so I was excited to see how his work meshed with the Carlby and Hirosha vibe. And in a way, 10 Tons seems to act as part of the connected narrative of the album, and its place on the track list after Maybe She Just Fell Asleep makes a lot of sense, and in my mind is very obviously on purpose. Lyrically, it seems like the aftermath of the presented situation in the previous track, and if the emo and intense post-hardcore influence on Maybe She Just Fell Asleep represents the building energy that can come with the end of a relationship, then 10 Tons is a dusty and dejected lo-fi to match the depressive energy of the Come Down. There's no more questioning, there's no more speculation. Now Carlby is presenting how he feels and acknowledging fault rather than just, wondering if he could have done something different. He knows he could have done something different. So narratively, I absolutely love how these tracks connect. Also, this is one of my favorite instrumentals on the album, despite it being one of the more sonically reserved ones. The dampened guitar and dark reverb heavy and occasionally crushed percussion creates such a moody and dark atmosphere. Pair that with the edgy, mid-range, heavy vocal mix, and hey, you got yourself a lo-fi track. Carlby once again takes the route of clean singing, and Hirosha once again provides some pretty amazing screams as the song progresses. And despite its low-key start, 10 Tons swells and builds up into a gorgeous group vocal as the instrumental gets brighter and crashes over itself. It's an incredibly powerful track. And after a poignant depiction of accountability in the form of sonic desolation, Rock Bottom takes us back to good old alternative emo. The chorus is incredibly catchy, pretty instantly memorable, with Carlby singing about his lowest lows and his reasons for continuing to push forward despite a lack of motivation. And once again, it fits into the narrative of this album pretty concretely. You have the, initial energetic burst when the relationship ends, the depressive come down, and now a more level-headed approach to coping and understanding emotions after enough time has passed to calm down. Despite the lack of energy, there is now that acknowledgement of needing to change and recognition of habits that led to this point. I love the vocal performance on this track a lot. Carlby delivers some great distorted screams, the additional vocals from Hirosha are fucking killer, and Lilac Heart's impassioned delivery paired with the shiny mix sounds so great over the articulate guitar riffs and these fast-paced, trap-influenced percussion. Now by this point you might be thinking, hey, we're 6 songs into this project. I really enjoy the songs, but I'm kind of getting a little bummed out. Have no fear, Lucy's song is up next. The instrumental, consisting of smooth piano chords and poppy synth melodies climbing up and down, creates a very nice mix of soft, saccharine melodies and a slight, shiny energy as well. I love how dampened the mix of the instruments are. The percussion exists almost solely in the mid and low range, with the exception of some sharp hi-hats. I think it's a great way to bring in intensity and energy while also limiting it to take away some of the edge. Lyrically, the song is hopeful and acts as the start of something new, seeing Carlby in a different context than the previous tracks. Instead of turmoil and separation, Lucy's song is in a way excited about the promising prospects of growing with somebody that is good and perpetuates positivity in this relationship. It's cute, honestly. It's a solid emotional turning point with an all-around effective mix and compelling lyricism. And now, with Color Rush, after providing additional vocals on every song, Hirosha is now in the spotlight with a guest verse on this track. You love to see it. The twangy guitar riff and compressed percussion gives this song a really great bounce to it. The melodies are sparkly and bright, especially in the piercingly high synths scattered throughout the track. Hirosha takes the hook on this one and describes the reintroduction to having color in his life, letting his guard down to experience these chromatic sensations. His vocals are fantastic on this super slick beat. There's a bit of a husky undertone to his vocals that give a bit of impact to his catchy melodies and impressive range, hitting low lows and high highs in his notes. I also really love this sort of shutter effect audio clip that Carlby has at the beginning of his verse. It's pretty faint in the mix, but it adds a nice amount of sort of immersive texture to the track and doubles as a bit of percussion in the mix as well. And the ultra compressed and dampened drums that also reside in the beginning of the verse show up quite a bit on this project, and I love it every time. I really think it's one of my favorite ways that Hirosha does drums. Carlby's vocal performance is also just as slick as the beat, singing gentle melodies about being hesitantly optimistic about his current situation, hoping that the work he's done to get to this point wasn't for nothing. It sort of builds up on the mentality of Lucy's song, ushering in a new age of emotional maturity and the shedding of past cynicism for Carlby. And then Where Would I Be If Not For You opens up with a Casablanca sample and extra large holiday card guitar. The song shows Carlby contemplating where he would be emotionally and even geographically if he had never entangled himself with this person that he's singing about. It's a bit of a soft rock tune, everything is fairly non-demanding on the track, and even when the drums pick up and the mix gets a little more complicated, it maintains a pretty consistent level of light and subdued energy. The biggest breakaway from this aesthetic being a section about halfway through the track where this chugging bass line comes in and the drums sort of wrap around the environment, but even then it's fairly short-lived and doesn't deviate too far away from the initially grounded energy. In my opinion, it's an interesting take on a heartbreak song because it's not necessarily this entirely bitter and regretful track, more so a speculative musing on how things just could have been different, with Carlby understanding that in hindsight, he was viewing this relationship through rose-tinted lenses, but still never places complete or direct fault upon this person. And his singing reflects this incredibly well. It's one of my favorite vocal performances on the album, especially when paired with the sweet rolling instrumental. Hirosha and Extra Large Holiday Card have fucking nailed this instrumental. It feels so full of depth and has all of the right textures. Then Carlby teams up with Skelly on Haunted, which is an unbelievable combination of artists. Jolst coming back with Hirosha on the production, and this makes a team of 4 people that really just know how to make a solid track. This is one of the most impressive and entertaining instrumental and mixes on the project, from the muddy guitar loop in the beginning to the dramatic thrash chords to usher the song in, to the absolutely killer drums. I swear that this entire album, this entire project, contains my favorite Hirosha drum work ever that is not lo-fi. I think at this point in the project, Carlby starts to further expand upon specific moments and themes brought up earlier, and I think that it provides a satisfying cohesiveness to everything. We're getting closer to the end of the album, we can recognize there is a loose narrative being told here, so we can kind of just assume that this is sort of the beginning of the final act. Carlby's vocals sound fantastic over these drums, and shout out Hirosha for delivering an industry standard mix on this track. This is how you do clean. And Skelly's contribution to this track is fantastic. His roomy and spacey vocals make for a great contrast against Carlby's fairly dry and clean mix. And this reverb heavy mix is certainly consistent with Skelly's other work. His most recent tracks have been some of my favorite ballad-esque songs that I've heard recently, but where I'm so used to hearing him on slow moving pianos and gentle guitars, it's really cool to hear Skelly over some more intensely structured and upbeat production. And at the end of the track, there is this nice ambient trap breakdown to wrap things up. It is so Hirosha, and I love it. And then Phased is a bit of a bright, poppy depiction of becoming jaded. The track probably has the furthest departure from the sonic themes established throughout the album, replacing organic drums with heavy, dark kicks, sharp hi-hats, and trading loose instrumentation for bit-crushed key melodies and twinkly, fast-paced, beeping synth riffs that have created a bit of a sci-fi sound effect. The format shifting on the hook only further perpetuates this deviation away from the sound that we have gotten used to up until this point, but the guitar work and vocal delivery prevents the sonic shift from being too jarring or whiplash-inducing. It's the shortest track on the album, by 2 seconds actually, but it still packs a punch that acts as a breath of new life into this project. Those lo-fi keys and digital climbing synths sound great under Carlby singing and Hiroshi's screams. It is honestly, it's an impressive sonic palette that blends some pretty and ethereal sounds. And then we have Overgrown to close the album out, and Overgrown acts as a pretty all-encompassing summary and mission statement for this album, and it does its job tremendously well. Because if this album is a complicated series of vignettes of growing up in the Midwest, Overgrown pulls the camera back just a little bit so you can get a bit of a fuller picture. And I think that despite it not being my absolutely favorite track on the album, it ends the project with a poignant depiction of how your whole life and world can revolve around a geographic location. One that once represented the colorful and fantastic experience of adolescence, now slowly fading away into a gray mosaic of shared memories with little resistance or protest to stop it from happening. The curtain is lifted, and as you grow older, you realize that the myopic lens of a child does not necessitate the accounting of reality, and it can be a bit of a culture shock to realize your entire life experience up to this point extends no further than 20 square miles. It's sobering, and I think that Carlby's depiction of this melancholic experience is gut-wrenching in that accuracy. Shops that you grew up around hanging out with your friends there are now closed. Landmarks that no one but the locals are aware of dilapidated due to a decreasing interest in their preservation. The humbling understanding that maybe, just maybe, you'll never view it the same way that you once did. It's a brilliant track, both thematically and sonically. The production matches the wistful sentimentality reflected in the lyrics. It explodes into a scene of shouted lyrics and cinematic instrumentation. It builds up, it lays it all bare, it's there, and then it just ends. And that's it. That's the album. I really, really loved this album a lot. It's one of my favorite albums of the year. As I said earlier, I think that Carlby's borderline perfectionist approach, Hiroshi's fantastic and methodical production, both of their capabilities to experiment, blend genres, it all comes together to make a really compelling project. You know, if you like just Midwest emo, you'll like this project. But if you like, Midwest emo with blends of post-hardcore, alternative pop, lo-fi even at some points, and the emotional maturity to present lyrics in a condensed and concise form that is not only interesting and introspective, but also just fun to listen to, you're gonna like this project. And with that, my review is over. I recommend going to listen to this. I had a lot of fun listening to it. I have probably listened to it more than anybody else other than the people that made it, and it's only been out for like a day. So with that, I'll see you next time. Bye.